into sort of the 101 stuff that we use for actually connecting our computers to our controllers. Most of our controllers, or nearly all of our controllers, run either DMX or what's called E1.31. You'll notice a lot of the gear now is all this E1.31 business, and the biggest thing we find is people sort of get a little bit confused about how to take it from the computer to a controller, and why is there no dongle, and basically that's what this is all about. As I said, very basic. I've got a couple of examples of some J1 sys boards here that we'll start to throw around the room. One's the ECG D2. Now this is actually what's called E1.31, so it'll actually come from your data out of your home routers, replace a USB dongle, and it'll pop out DMX out of the two connectors on the back there. So DMX controllers are things like the Ray Wu 27 channel controller that we passed around earlier. John, your floodlights DMX?
Oh, there's LOR, DMX.
Oh, yeah. Basically, Ray's got little 10-watt floodlights like John's got set up over there. They've got little DMX controls built into them, and you can set them up for channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First one in the case, second one out of the case. Second one's a P2. P2 is E1.31 in and pixel data out. So basically, when we're looking at pixel data, we're looking at the way Eddie controls his lights, the way that matrix will light up, the way I've got my little P2 hooked up over there. It's all the addressable pixel strips. Only difference between these, obviously you could pull them both apart, but when you look at the boards without the P2 in the case, they're pretty much identical. The only big difference is on the output of the P2, it's actually got the little screw-in things that we'd plug lights into, whereas the D2's got RJ45 Cat5 cables that we'd plug in to connect out. So we'll start throwing them around. Just keep that one on the bag there. Yep. Keep our fingers off of it. Yeah. So basically, what I'm talking is your very basic DMX to start with. I think John actually had a dongle over there, didn't you? But
Yeah, I've got them.
Most of us are familiar with the Lightorama dongles, and when you first start out with Lightorama, you're using your Lightorama protocol, and then you sort of discover that these dongles will actually they're pretty much the same as an open DMX dongle, and they can output DMX as well. Biggest problem is with the dongles is we outgrow them very quickly. They're great to start off with, and then you get up to big channel counts, and you either have 10 dongles lined up, or you start moving on to this E1.31 stuff. One dongle will put out 512 DMX channels, 512 channels being one universe of DMX. When we talk DMX, we generally drop that back to 510 channels, because we're always talking 3 channels, which would be 170 bulbs, or 170 DMX 3-channel units. So DMX still has a big part in most of our displays. DMX is still a part that can be used for things like floodlights, little standalone things that you might want to control, like Christmas light motifs. If your rope light on your motifs buggers up, you can replace it with strip or something like that. Still just have it as 3 channels. The good thing about replacing a motif with a bit of LED strip or RGB strip, yep, things like that is basically, if you use a rope light, you've got your 1 channels. If you use either little modules or little bulbs, you can actually, modules are bulbs. Sean's got some up the back there. You can strap those around the outside of those frames, and and basically you can have any sort of colour combination of whatever part of the face you wanted. You could have one song where the outside of the frame is blue. The next song you might just want to mix it up and change it to green. So, and you've got a little bit of a lower channel count to sort of worry about with that. You could cover that frame in little pixel modules, like around the roof there, and have 500 channels for one little frame, or you could control it with about 15 channels instead, just with your mouth, your outside frame, and your few mouth movements. So yeah, DMX is great for keeping your channel down, where you don't have to control every single bowl. You can just keep it a little bit more simple. After that, we move into obviously our P2, which is starting to output data to every single bulb. I have bought a very basic setup over to the right here that we can go and have a look at shortly. It basically consists of, over the back there's just a wireless D-Link router, which most of us would have a wireless router in our house, or even just a cabled router. It's got two RJ45 connections coming out of it at the moment. One's going into a Raspberry Pi, which I'll talk about later. But effectively, the Raspberry Pi in this demonstration will be my show computer, and the other one's just going to a P2 because I'm using pixels. I've just got a roll of 28, 11, 12 volt strip there that I'm using for the demonstration. So basically, as far as home network setups go, yes, you can have a separate router and keep it all separate from your home network, or you can plug it into your home network. When you start spitting out a few thousand channels of data, it does slow down a home network. Some people don't worry about it, but you know, for the cost of just a little router or a few network switches, you can certainly set it up separately.
Something you've got to remember too is when we're spitting out that amount of data, some of your other items like your modem or TV, if you've got smart TV, don't like all that information over the network and may cause problems.
You've got to remember that the standard's UDP multicast, so it literally throws heaps of data out on that.
Yeah, there's a whole multicast, unicast debate that goes on and on and on and on.
For a few hours anyway.
Yeah, for a few hours. I use unicast myself. All these controllers have. We'll look at that also. But
for most of us, unicast or multicast really is not going to matter.
It doesn't matter.
Our size shows, it's really not going to matter. I've looked deeply into it, and where the advantages start to happen is multicast becomes a better advantage with really large shows. So an advantage with really large shows for two reasons. All right, with unicast, you're sending out data to every IP that you set. So if you've got a lot of controllers, you're having to send it out to every controller. So it's a lot of data, individual data you're going to send. So if you use multicast, what you then do through your switches and routers is it will then automatically know where to send that data to. The problem then comes to is, does the controller handle being flooded with all that data at the same time? So there's sort of two debates going on. You know, you've got one here where the networks can suffer because of ArtNet, or the other problem is, can the controllers suffer because of being multicast? So where unicast, the controller is only just being sent its data and that's it. But with multicast, the controller's actually getting all the data, it's just picking the bits it needs. So, so the sort of debate is, the larger the system, multicast starts to become an easier thing to manage, and it's better for wireless and things like that because you only have to send out the one stream instead of multiple streams and multiple IPs, and it will just work out, and through the smart routing and things like that, it'll work out where it's got to send the data. So, but for us guys, it goes down to personal favourites really. For me, I rather just use multicast because I don't have any problems and it's easy to set up. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, with multicast and unicast, yes, it can get a little bit more involved in setting it up in your software. whereas if you want to just send data to a particular item, this is the P2 that's actually loaded up over there on the side there, and I've just logged into it using the IP address that's I've assigned to that controller. So basically in my display, in my software of choice, which I use Lightshow Pro, I can either multicast it out or I can do what's called unicast. So if if that control is hooked up to just that strip, or in my case candy canes, I'll just send the data that needs to go to that controller from the computer. It'll just go straight to that IP address, and that's sort of the basic difference between your multi and your unicast. But as Eddie said, most real experts, and I got no idea from one side to the other of it, but most people will just say that there's no real drama with using multicast at all in our size shows.
With my display, I mean, it was 10,000 channels, but I was only getting 12.5 to 15% network utilisation over the network. So still lots of room to go before you start really getting into bottlenecks and things like that. And even then, all you do is you just create another network. So just another network card in your computer, you can create 2 separate networks.
Yeah, that's it. That's the other thing too. You can either have a dedicated show computer. I usually use my laptop here as a show computer. I do all my sequencing on the big computer at home, the desktop. Multiple screens on it, so it's great to sort of separate different components of the software on it. Have chat in the corner as well, keep an eye on everything. Yeah, when it comes down to it, I just usually have this whacked in the garage. I output video on my display as well. So for me to just have the HDMI hooked up to the projector, running video sequences on the garage as well, and a computer that's running the Lightshow scheduler, and away we go. But yeah, a lot of people without video, obviously you can just use your home network and just output your sequence. It depends on how much you want to dedicate to your actual show, whether you want to buy a separate computer or whether you have one available. I generally just use this one for work, and I've got my other one at home.
I've always tried to keep my network separate.
Yep.
So people try to use their home network, and I don't think it's a good idea to use your home network, because you might have a show running, and who's to say your son might or someone might decide
Start downloading a movie,
and then you're going to start seeing all sorts of stuff. Because the thing with E1.31 is there's no actual error checking. So if the packet comes out of order or the packets are missed, then it's not going to ask for a resend or anything like that. So the more load you put on your network, the more chance you're going to start seeing these problems where you're going to see things not in order and things starting to not work properly. So and again, it depends on your usage and things like that. Mileage does vary depending on things, but I've always kept my system completely separate off the home network. I've actually even made sure that my computer wasn't online or anything like that. It was just as a show machine, and that's it. After the show was off, I just plug it into back to the internet, and then I could use the internet. But I just made sure, I was just more, that was just me, but just trying to eliminate any kind of network interference.
And that does get down to what was touched on a few seconds ago with adding an extra network card to your computer. I mean, basically, if you do want to use your home computer, but you want to have a separate router for, like if you did have a little wireless or a network switch in your garage that you want to start to use as your hub to go out to E1.31 products, you can set up an additional network card in your computer. One's going to run your internet side. The other network card is purely going to spit out data to your display at the front. So it separates them there.
Or if you've got a laptop, you use your wireless for your internet, you just turn the wireless off and just use your normal network out for your network.
Yep. All right. Yeah, so that's the two boards. I mean, basically these these little DMX ones, that's a J1 Sys one. What else have we got in DMX?
You've got your sand device bridge.
Sand device bridge has got a DMX, so they're all E1.31. So when we talk the E1.31 side, that's virtually from the input side of the controller or the protocol bridge. So it's changing E1.31 into DMX out the other side. So basically what it is that's just plugging straight into your computer, either by a network switch or a router, or in this case it's wireless at the moment. So it's going from here to my little wireless router. The computer is wireless over there, and then I have the P2 plugged into the network over there. So basically, yes, I can load up LightShow Pro there now and start controlling that switch, start controlling that piece of strip over there in a wireless format. I don't use wireless for my actual show, but wireless is great when you can sit across the road. I've usually got my wireless router in the garage. I can sit across the road on the chair, just with battery on the laptop, have a bit of a look at the show, change it on the fly. Go into the software, change a bit that I'm not really happy with, because at the end of the day, it's only us that sort of look at it and go, it's not perfect. No one else, believe it or not, gives a crap.
You mean they don't notice that one LED out over there
they
or
don't
something?
notice it, or that thing was a tenth of a second out of whack.
Depends who comes to visit your show. What are you trying to say?
We're all the critical ones.
So yeah, I do use wireless, and that's one thing I love about a full E1.31 display. My display is based on all E1.31. I've got a 24 port network switch mounted in the garage, and I've got hardwired data cabling out to the eaves and out to the garden and things like that. And so for me to set up and pack up at the end of the year, I'm just dragging cables around the yard, plugging them in, and effectively it's just the same as running wires across the yard.
I still get lost with all these
Yep.
universes and channels
Yep.
and everything else. You draw a simple picture
Yep.
that shows the computer on the left through the lights on the right,
Yep.
and what all these things are. Because you throw the terms out there and I get lost.
I'll just quickly explain what E1.31, all E1.31 is actually DMX. But it is DMX wrapped up in a package so it can be sent through a network instead of through a USB. So it follows all the same kind of rules of 512 channels and things like that. So he's going to show you what DMX, but DMX and E1.3 are effectively the same thing.
We
It's
draw
just the way
both
it's
of them
packaged.
What do you want?
We do your E131 and then maybe draw a DMX next to it so I can see what.
Oh, we can do it on
Do
the
it
same side. So basically out of the computer there, on the side of this computer, or in this case Wi-Fi, are over there. So that's our first link. So I've got a Ethernet somewhere on the right hand side of the computer, and it's currently talking wireless. If I was to have this hardwired in my garage now, I'd have a Cat5 cable running straight into the network switch or router in this case. The router over there has 8 ports on the back of it. So basically one port is always going to be the input, and the other 7 are going to be outputs to different E1.31 compatible controllers, whether they be DMX protocol bridge. Now what we talk about is one is classed as a protocol bridge. So it's changing the E1.31 data, changing the protocol to DMX output. Okay, so that's all that one's doing. That's our first link here.
Now, on your router there, you've got a receiver.
Sorry?
On that router, you've got a receiver plugged into the back of it.
The wireless.
Yeah.
It's just a wireless router.
Okay, so that's picking up the signal from there.
Most of your Telstra routers and things like that, if you've got wireless network in your house.
So what I'm hearing is you've got a router here of some sort,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And then you can hang multiple of these things off.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So we've got. Sorry, it's not a P. It's a D2, which is DMX.
This here is E1.
That's just a Cat5 cable. That's a Cat5 cable. Okay?
Okay.
So
I
that's
get that.
that's the best way to write it down. So computer, or computer, in my case over there, I've actually got a Pi. So I could run either one of those, the same thing, that will output E1.31 as well. I'll get into that one later. Yeah, so router in there, 8 ports out there, we've got 2 there now. Okay, so DMX and Pixel. Okay, this is the big one. DMX, we'll just use this as a RAID 27, or we'll actually use it as an LOR controller as well. Okay. LOR controls will all run in DMX mode, and that's the way a lot of us use our LOR controllers that we bought back in the day where none of this stuff really existed. I still have a couple of LORs that I use. They're the 240 volt ones. They're actually being phased out now, but as the 240 volt lights start to break down, I just replace it with digital strip or RGB. D2, this is one with the RJ45 plugs on the back. The other J1 SIS module, the other J1 SIS protocol bridge is a D4 or a DR4. We can draw a D4 up there.
All they are is just basically double the D2. They're just
Yep.
4 universes
That's
out
right.
of DMX.
So they're putting out 4 universes of DMX. That's putting out 2 universes of DMX. So earlier I mentioned that a universe is 512 channels. Okay, so that's putting out 512 channels out of the first little output. 512, 512, 512, total of 2,048 channels of DMX. Now, basically, if I used one of those little RGB spotlights over there, they're 3 channels each, or one of Ray's 27 boards, I'll use the spotlight because it's easy to work out. I could have 170 of those little spotlights hooked up to one output on there and have 2 channels left over. 170 times 3, so 170 little 3-channel DMX controllers, which is effectively what's in the back of that spotlight. Daisy chained along, all the power's going into it. All we're doing in a protocol bridge is spitting out DMX data. We're not doing anything with power. No such thing as power out of a, well there is, but we won't go into PDMX. Yeah, so all we're doing is spitting out universes of data there. So with your DMX, we'll use that spotlight again. So we've got three channels there, 3 channels there, 3 channels there. So basically, we're out of the first output there, we've got 512 to use. We're using channel 1, 2, 3, channel 4, 5, 6, channel 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 510.
So
Which
each
would
of
be
those
our
spotlights are individually addressed.
Yeah. When you order, I've got a couple of those spotlights. They're not bad value. 10 watt. I used them inside some Coro presents that I made underneath a Christmas tree, underneath the mega tree. So they light up the inside of the present really well, as opposed to mounting 50 just dumb modules on the bottom there. I just have the one spotlight in there, and I don't have to worry about wiring up all the modules or mounting them or anything. I'll just throw the spotlight in there, turn it on, away it goes. Okay, so we basically got 9 channels there. That's basic DMX.
And you hook them all up in series.
They're just data in, data out. Yeah. So with DMX, what it will do is every single controller will see the 512 channels of data going through it, but it will only select the channels that are preset for that DMX module to get. A lot of, like your Ray Wu boards have got little dip switches on them that you can set up your channel to be to read it as channel 100, so that you'd set it at start channel 100, and that controller would then become 100, 101, 102. Yeah. Red module on there, dip switches. There's plenty of online calculators. I've got one on my iPhone. Yeah, great. Dip switch calculator or something like that. Type in the channel number. Sorry?
On the forum as well, I think just do a search for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you can get it anywhere, but the dip switch calculator is great. Free app. Type in channel 50, whatever. It'll tell you what switches to set on those controllers.
So I'll come out of the D2.
Yep.
So up top there, the D4, what are you connected
2, 5
up?
and 6 on.
The E1.31 is it?
Yeah, that's just all going back to the router.
So you're just connecting, like they just go through with a Cat5 cable?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is Cat 5. That's Cat 5,
Yeah.
and after this is your homemade stuff.
Right.
Okay.
So you could put, keep on putting your Ray Wu 27s
Yeah.
on.
Now they're all daisy chained. You can't actually. Well, you can get DMX splitters, but you wouldn't just tap in there. Go channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, I know, they
Yeah.
won't work right. They'll just carry on.
Yep.
You can put 10 of them in a row.
I think
Yeah,
you're limited
270,
to
so
about
Well, you put 170 of them in a row.
I think you're limited to about 32 on DMX, but you can get DMX splitters.
Yeah.
There's one in the box over there,
Yeah.
so you can daisy chain those up.
Yeah. So basically, we're just talking how many channels are available.
And it is. They talk about putting a resistor on the last one.
Yeah, DMX terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that limited to lights?
Yeah.
You can have stone
So one of the guys at Adelaide, I was in Adelaide last week. There's things on the forum and in the wiki about DMX terminators, and I actually saw what was quite clever. They got the little plastic RJ45 plugs that go on the end of the Cat 5 cables. What is it, 100 ohm resistor?
Yep.
Or something?
something like that.
Put it across the two data pins, which in DMX is 1 and 2, I think it was. Yeah, whichever one, whatever it is on the forum. They just stuck the resistor in the end of the RJ45, crimped it up, and that was effectively a terminator. Yeah, a lot of these Ray ones, we actually knocked these off and put RJ45 plugs on them. You'll notice they've got 3 pins on them. That's all DMX is. It's just a data plus, data minus, and a common. So that's all we use out of the 7 pins that are in our RJ45. 8 pins, sorry. We're only using pin 1, 2, and 7. So yeah, the DMX terminators. Some of the boards like AVDs, probably Hanson's, some of those DMX boards have jumper on them to actually, you can set a DMX terminator up on them. The theory behind it is basically, if you've got your board here, and a lot of people have done this too, if you've got your board there that's got a DMX terminator on it, that one's not going to work. I think, and people will correct me, but basically what the job of the DMX terminator is to stop the signal from bouncing backwards. One thing we get, and that would be the same if we actually fed a bit of data cable off here before channel 1, and had another board down there. Basically what might happen is you might get your DMX signal into there, it'll start to bounce back, and when it gets back to where it started from, it's not happy. So just keep your DMX stuff all daisy chained. And
So what's your Ray 27 board? What's it taking in and what's it speaking?
that's a Ray 27 board. So it's taking DMX
Right, so out of the
out of the P4 or D2.
right.
So out of this one. So that's the one that's got the RJ45s front and back. A computer. Universe 1.
Right.
Okay, Universe 1. Like I said, a lot of us knock these off. There's a whole 60-page odd thing on the Ray 27. It's been very popular when it first came out. You can, Dave had the XLR plugs up there earlier. You can use those obviously, but they're big and bulky. They come out about
Just a 3
4 inches.
And they're
Right.
damn
$10
expensive.
each.
Yeah, they're expensive. They're about
Yeah,
$10 each.
$10 each
Yeah.
back home.
$10 in New Zealand, $7
Bloody
in
hell,
Australia. So what we're doing is we're going Universe 1, and that could be named any universe, obviously, with the interface, but we're just going to call it Universe 1. It's going into there, data only. It's going out there. Okay, it's going to the next one. In and out, in and out. These have got little solder pads on them called J12. They're effectively connected up to the 3 pins on the XLR plugs. So you can basically just solder 3 wires in and out. I believe I haven't seen any of them. I haven't bought these for a while. I've got 5 of them sitting in a box at home that I'm not using at the moment, and they've all got the XLRs on it. But I have seen some people actually say that Ray is popping RJ45 plugs on.
It's an option. I've got some.
I think there's a version 2, isn't there? Coming
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Cost you $1 more.
Yeah.
$1, 70
Still
cents
got-
in
still
Australia,
got
$1
the
for New
ones.
Zealand.
Well, $1.10 back then. That's US.
That's US, yeah. So basically that's all we're doing. We're daisy chaining in and out and keep going. So in my display, I have 2 of these mounted in similar boxes like that with power supply for my window frames.
And then what comes out the green ones is,
Oh, this is your lights.
right,
Yeah.
so your 2811.
No.
No?
No, dumb.
Dumb
Dumb.
RGBs.
Dumb. This is a DC controller. Okay.
You know your relay board that you've got?
There's one around that's got 4 cables.
We'll pretend that.
You know the relay board you've got
We'll
up there?
pretend that.
It does the same thing.
Well, do you want some dumb ones here?
No, I've got a dumb one,
So you
sounds.
can
I've got a
actually
whole box
do
of
voltage management, so you can
It's got
actually do
4 wires.
on and off.
Yep.
You can actually do
And I'll-
dimming as well.
You've got a box or something?
They're over here. Here we go, here's one here. We've got some there.
Yep. All right. So this little piece of off-cut strip here is what we call dumb RGB. So most of you would know that dumb RGB is we just put, in this case, 3 LEDs per module. That'll be 12 volt. We just put power across from the common wire, which will be the black one, and we've got 3 wires left over, which are RGB. Guess what colours they are? If China's wired them up right, red will be red, blue will be blue, and green will be green.
Good luck.
So we can assume that until we see otherwise. So basically 12 volts across the black and the blue one will light this whole string up blue. Combination of blue and red will mix those 2 colours, and what do we get? Purple or something like that. Okay. That's called dumb strip. Effectively all you need to get that running is 12 volts. Okay, if they're single little modules like that, you can get dumb strings. They're generally 5 volts. Controller like this, we've got banks of 4 on here. The first one, I can't see it. It's in behind all the.
It's at the far end.
It's at the far end. Yeah, I'll just make it up as I go. The first one will be the common one. Now that common one will be linked to every single common one on there. So this is being a 27 channel controller. So there's 9 banks. So there's 9 lots of dead strip that we can, or dumb strip that we can control off that. So basically all we'd do to that is we'd go the black into the common. We'll consider it RGB. So we'll go black, we'll go red into channel 1, we'll go green into channel 2, and we'll go blue into channel 3.
So that means all the power for those lights is coming through that board.
Exactly.
Exactly, yep.
Yep. Yep. Makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it?
Wow.
I use
Run too many.
I use 2 of these, or one, I can't remember. Might be a couple of these. What do you got?
Modded ones for higher current.
High current, yeah. There is a this is a great example. Okay. Here's Dave's board. You can see he's ripped off the XLR plugs, and he's just put Raywu pigtails on it. Now he's put a male female on there because generally you'll always daisy chain them in male female. With these sockets there on the input and output, it doesn't matter which one's male, which one's female. There's no right or wrong. Effectively, all those pads are joined up together. Okay. So they're just an in and an out. This one here's been modified for higher current. When we I don't know what the specs on them are. I don't use mine with a lot. Before I get to the higher current, I'll just explain what I was going through on that. You can pass that around while we're talking about it. Yeah, I can't remember what the amperages were, but 1 amp per channel.
Up to 15 amp per board.
That's right.
Yeah. So one amp per channel would basically be being an RGB strip will draw. It won't draw 3 amps, but we call it 3 amps. So that'd be a third of that strip. I use these boards on. I've got a bay window out front. That bay window is obviously a left section, 2 middle sections, and a right section on a bit of an outgoing window. So basically, just as basic RGB, before pixels come out, I use these boards. My left-hand side of the window is channel 1, 2, 3. I've got 2 centre ones, which are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so it's only 12 channels. My bay window, so I can still roughly control every window as its own window. No, there's more than that. I've put a few extra channels in the middle section. So basically, I can do a rainbow pattern or run across the whole house, and that window will separate into separate bits. Yeah.
In a way where people think it's intelligent.
Yeah.
And when I tell people that more than half my house is actually made of dumb RGB.
Mine's the same.
People actually go, what? I thought it was digital.
Yeah.
Get all that colour sweeps and go, because I just break it up into sections. So
I'm sure we'll show some videos of like Eddie's original house or original show. My show was virtually exactly the same sort of setup. I had no digital to start with. It was all DMX. It was all either Ray 27 channel controllers, or I used David's 48 channel controllers, and then we go into the new stuff like Alan's Mega 60. So basically my whole roof line was broken up into 1 metre sections. So every one of those sections going up the ridge caps was 3 channels. So instead of having pixels which are 100 mil apart go across my whole roof, it was just 1 metre sections lighting up as blocks. You wouldn't know.
all you guys, you actually spot the pricing now.
Yeah.
When we started,
Yeah.
the price difference between dumb RGB and intelligent RGB was
Yep.
more than double.
That's right.
So really for us at the early stage, for me it was like, okay, I'll just do my gutter, because the gutter is one of those points where you can sort of see, and then the rest was just dumb RGB. So the gutter was done in intelligent, and then the rest was done in dumb RGB, because then the illusion was, because the gutter was digital, everything else around it seemed to appear digital as well. So it's the way you use the light together that can get you really good, my show's only 10,000 channels 2 years ago. Now, everyone's talking about doing, 20,000 channels, this, that, and the other. And I look at it and I say, okay, they've got 20,000 channels, but they still don't have as many lights, because what they're now using is all digital lights, none dumb RGB.
Yep.
So my whole roof line was dumb RGB, my roof tiles was dumb RGB. There was the only thing on the house that was intelligent was actually the gutter, but I was able to get the nice smooth phase going across the house. And mate, when I tell people that, most people are actually surprised to know that, because you are still able to achieve that kind of flowing effect across the house.
Most people that logged on the forum tomorrow as new people and know Eddie's display would see it in the video and go, yeah, it's RGB. Until you look at it really closely, it's digital. Until you look at it really closely and you go, oh yeah, it's much the same. It's just done up in metre and a half strips across it. Mine was the same. My whole house and garden, my garden out the front was LOR 240 volt. my house was all just dumb strip. It still is today, until it starts to break down, and then I'll replace it with digital. But the price comparison for digital controllers, you can buy a P2, which will do all your little individual bulbs. So yes, you can run a whole digital strip, like John's matrix there. We'll see that light up later. A lot cheaper than what you can do with DC boards. The whole thing is with my roof. My roof consists of DC 48, so it's broken up into 16 1.5 roughly metre sections that go across the ridge cap and up the apex of the roof.
There's programming advantages to it as well, because you're not having to program as many channels. You're not having to use the loader on the computer as much, things like that. So, you know, when we were doing it, software couldn't support that many channels.
No.
So we had to think within the boundaries of what we were working with and still try to achieve the effect we had in our minds. So, 4 years ago, I mean, Lightshow Pro was really, after 2,500 channels, was starting to give us troubles. LOR, people are starting to hit a brick wall with Lightorama as far as channels. You've got to be thinking too within the limitations of the software you're using. So you think, do I need to use digital for everything? Or can I just utilise that effect and just use non-digital and then reduce 1,000 channels in my display and still get the same effect?
Yeah, I could probably do all the strip over my house. At the moment, like I said, without my megatree is around 2,500 channels. But the house itself and the garden out the front and everything else that's in there, the presents under the tree, are all DMX. It probably comes in, I don't know, 120 odd channels, nothing. But it looks like a digital display, and it's not until you get into your pixels. There's several videos on there. We concentrated last week in Adelaide on Matt's house. Matt was with me up in Brisbane after our first Mini, and we were starting to get into pixels there, and he sort of jumped straight into pixel, which is a great idea for him because it was a lot cheaper, and he can control every single bulb on his house. So that was great. Yeah, the disadvantage with obviously doing like our setups are with DMX on your house is, yes, it's low channel count, but out of every one of these inputs or outputs, you've got a 10 metre cable going back to going over to the far side of your house, or obviously if you could split these up into sections of your house. Mine's all centralised up on the roof in one controller, and I just run just run the multi-core cables straight out to those sections of lights that are mounted conduit. They're all plugged up, so basically I just pull them all apart, wrap a cable tie around them and hang them up. But yeah, but that's your basic DMX and what we call a DC controller, which we use for dumb lights. Someone earlier said they bought a big W string along. Anyone who wants to look at using things like big W strings, this is also a big one. People have got lots of big W strings. How do you make them work on a controller? You would make them work on a controller like this. It's a DC controller. Yes, you do have to cut them up, and you do have to know where to cut them in the string. Not a hard operation once you know what to look for. You can do it. Because basically if you cut those big W strings in the wrong spot, no more. Well, you solder it up and go and ask Dave where to cut it. But yeah, so basically you just use a DC controller like that with most of those lights. Most of those lights are all AC lights, and the little multifunction controllers have rectifiers in them that change it to DC. When we're talking big W lights, we're looking around 27 to 30 volts to run them, DC. A lot of people just will run them off a 24 volt ray power supply, or you can get the 27s. I think you can actually get as well, and you can actually tweak them up. They've all got variable screws on them. You can tweak them up to about 30 volts, sometimes depending on what part of the factory it come out. So, yeah, sometimes it'll say 27, you plug it in, it's got 24 and it'll crank it up to 27. So yeah, you get what you're given, unfortunately, out of China, and you make it work. So
What about pixels?
Yeah,
When you're doing
pixels.
pixels, what is that?
Okay, pixels, we throw that away.
Okay.
We don't want to know about that. We're going into this one. A set of pixels, and this is a demonstration that I can show over there. RJ45 plug. It's going into the same place as the D2. This is our pixel controller underneath it. Now that pixel controller can be a P2 which has 2 outputs on it. I think they will actually run 4 universes out of each controller. So 2048 out of each side of this. So
and are they daisy chained?
yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, good on you.
So P2 is just plugged into a router. The difference with a difference between a pixel controller and a DC setup is we don't need a controller after it. Okay, this is our controller. Our P2 is our controller. It's plugged straight into our router. We always need these P2s, whether it be the Pixelite 16, the P2, the Stelloscopes, the Lightorama, no, not Lightorama boards, any E1.31 pixel controller. The P12Rs over there, I think there's a couple of other, the Avatec ones, yeah, Pixelite, yep, gone into that one. So they're all E1.31 pixel output. They all need to go back to routers. So we'll call that one a P12. That's John's matrix. So I've got a P2 going to my little roll of string there. John's got his P12s. He's got a couple of P12s there. So basically,
I mean, look at it as just being like a normal computer network. It's exactly
That's
the
right.
same. What these are, what these controllers are, is just like a mini computer with an IP address, just like any other computer would have when we're connecting to a computer or a network. So what we do is just treat it exactly the same as a normal computer network.
Yep.
So we connect to the IP and then we communicate to it. So it connects to a router when we've got multiple. So our home network might have a router where we connect multiple, or switch where we connect multiple devices to, and then we communicate through that. And the way we communicate, we might be communicating directly direct IP, or we might be using multicast. You know, it just all depends on the way you're doing it. But it's just treated as normal computers. So don't think any more confusing.
But I guess at the end of the day, not many people actually go and set up their home network.
no, and that's the whole thing. I mean, a lot of people will get their big pond router. They'll plug their one computer into it and see all these RJ45 plugs sitting on the back and go, what do I need those for? And that's right. We talked about this little D-Link router over there having 8 ports on the back. So 7 of them are going to be output, 1's input. Obviously, and if you were just using that, you'd be able to use 7 E1.31 controllers hanging off the back of it. So the other thing that we can actually do is just have what's called a network switch. And that's basically the difference between a network switch is that one's a router, so it will actually connect up to a phone line, put my big pond account into it, I've got internet coming through it. As a switch, no router side to it. So network switches are only doing, it's like a power board for, it's like a 4-way power board adapter. It's just spitting the data through it. So if that was an 8-way switch, I could have another 8 E1.31 controllers coming off of that. So basically, in a house setup, I've got a router up in the garage. Out to one side of the house, I might actually have an 8-channel switch. Out the other side of the house, I might have another 8-channel switch. I'm probably only using 2 outputs on each of them, but it's just a distribution so that I don't have to run everything back to the one location.
Simple example of how
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So this is a network switch. We've actually got a couple of network switches that someone's brought along that we're going to give away as prizes later. But network switches are also great for when you are testing on a bench or anything like that. You don't need internet or anything with it. It's just a distribution centre for your computer network. Basically, is what it is.
It
So
just
with,
goes out like a star.
yeah, so with the DMX stuff, we're daisy chaining it from controller to controller. With the Pixel or the E1.31 controllers, we're sending it all back to a hub and octopussing it out in arms just from the one section out.
If you want to give away now, Steve, you can, for guys that don't have a spare router or anything for their computers, or on another network card, we've got a few of those.
Yeah.
So if you only had the one device, you don't need that. You can just connect straight to it.
Yeah, I have troubles doing that.
Yeah, so.
Me too.
I think it's something to do with my network, but I cannot plug that P2 straight into that computer without a switch.
What would be is maybe you
Tried that. Yeah, tried that.
or the IP that you're sending out from on your network card.
Well, yeah, they're sending out as 192s, and that's all set as static 192s.
Okay. No, I've
But
never had
yeah,
trouble
I can't do it.
I can't do it that way, but I could do it this way. If I add a USB RJ45.
Yeah.
Same thing there, if you've got one of those cheap switches, some don't want
50.
either.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've always just got a couple of I don't know what brand those ones are, but I've got a couple of network switches from Jaycar. They're about $15 each for eight ports, and I've never had any troubles with them. But yeah, one-to-one computer to controller, I can't do it.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I've never really worried about it. For me, I just plug it into. Like most of my testing, like I said, I've just done it through that old router, which is just an old ADSL1 router that I don't use anymore. That's a modem. Yeah. So basically, you'll see my modem over there. It's a D-Link. That's a D-Link modem only, so there's no Wi-Fi out of that one. You can plug it into your computer. It's probably only ADSL1. Yeah, it's only ADSL, so no one would actually use it as a router anymore, because most of us would be on ADSL2. But effectively, you can just use it as a network switch. So it's a rather expensive network switch, but
What if you get it today?
if you get it today, it's got to go and buy Sean a beer.
With the network switch, right?
Yep.
You mentioned before you've got a 24
Yep.
in the garage. Is it better to have one 24, or could you set up like a series of 8, sort of like 4 meters, and 8 around the house sort of thing?
Yeah, I should get pictures, but my computer's
Like,
gone flat.
is there any advantage of having a power supply, further down the track?
Oh, well, as I said, I'm no data expert.
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
Technically, yes, it's better to have one single 24-port switch, but what we're doing won't make any difference.
Yeah.
The Stafford Baptist Church up in Queensland, they had stacks.
Oh, that's a big display.
Yeah, they're all E1.31 based. In fact, they wrote their own protocol and did their own hardware controls as well. But that's the story in itself. I think they had at least 28-port switches between the weather place.
Yeah.
It worked fine.
I've got a picture on my computer that I can pop up later, and basically it's a data rack that's just mounted up on the top of my wall. I've got all my data cable goes through a hole into the ceiling, and I actually just change it around a little bit at Christmas time, just through patch cables. So it's just like an old telephone system. You plug that person into that person, and away you go. Yeah, so basically I've got a 24-port switch, a router there, and because I've got hardwired just wall plates out on my eaves, I disconnect them through the patch cables through the year, and that way no one can plug into the roof and hack my system, I guess. But yeah, you can just sort of move stuff around. The good thing about it is I've got I've got left and right side of my house up in the eaves. I've got 2 data points on each side of the house, 2 up for the roof. The reason I've got 2, some of them have got 3, is I might want to use that cable for DMX instead of pixel data. So where it comes into the 24 port switch, I won't use it into the switch because that's all computer network. I'll just plug it straight into my D4, and the D4 will just send it straight out through that data cable through my roof, and I'll plug my Ray 27 channel controllers into it at the other end. So yeah, I just did it because I do a lot of that stuff through working and whatnot, and to me it was just easy to sort of have the options there, and if I needed to change something, I'd just go into the garage, swap a few 30mm pig tails around, and away you go. Yeah, plug the computer in and give it a go. Give it a look. No, it's dead. It's flat. I must have used it too much last night. Yeah. Don't know what on.
So the lights hanging out of the P2, you
Yep.
control what, two strings of lights?
No. Well, the P2, the wrong one. Yeah, somewhere. The P2 is the one in the box. It's just got the little. Yeah, that's it. So it's just got the. No, that's the D2. That is the P2. Yeah. So the P2's just got these little, and most of the controllers have got these. Just the little green connector on them, screwdriver on the top, bare wires in, plug them up, away you go. I'll just grab mine, the case.
You run 2 strings out of the P2 up to
680 kilowatts. 4 universes per side.
4 universes, so
Yep.
it's 4 watt.
That's right, four universes per side, so 2048 channels per output. This is one of mine that basically emulates what Dave was saying earlier with power in. I've just got a power in there, power into the back of the controller, it goes around the other side, no power comes out that side, and the power just goes through the plug. On this one here you can actually see it's written on the cases what's what. So this one is ground clock data and voltage. As we said earlier, you can hook up pixels to the outputs on these. It's not recommended. I think it was about 5 pixels at 5-volt ones. Yeah, so 5 pixels is all you do on it. You use these just as data.
They actually have a whole heap of options on them, like there's like a whole sheet.
Yeah, they do, but don't go into it. Yeah. Obviously with these pixel controllers, this one's set up for 12 volts. The same with most of the boards. Well, I use all J1 sys boards. Most of the boards have got power options on them to either run them with 5 volt or 12 volt. All my little pixel controllers, like my P2s, are hooked up to candy canes or the modules. That's not an RGB one, but that's like a module, so it's got three LEDs in it, 12 volt RGB. They're what I use for my candy canes and the Coro candles that Eddie's done the write-ups on. I've got a few of those lying around. And yeah, the power just goes into those light strings, and the P2s happily run those things. I've got a couple of these, and we mentioned they run about 4,000 channels. I've got a couple of these that are just at the start of some elements. They're about what, $100 for the controller, 105 with the case. I will never ever get to use one full output on that one, unless
You're not trying.
I'm not trying.
Never say never.
All right. So what I'll actually do is that one's usually mounted down the front corner of my house, and it's actually running 10 candy canes, and then I've got a 10 metre void cable which has got a couple of dead pixels, null pixels in it, and then it starts to run my candles. What have we got? 30, 60, 90. Probably about 300-400 channels coming out of that thing. So quite effectively, when my RGB strip or my DC controllers up on the roof start to die, I could probably feed off that one and change my pixel strip on the roof, which would be a lot cheaper than replacing the RGB channels or the RGB strip, dumb strip, and a lot less work as well. The only thing I'd have to change is obviously my sequencing. But yeah, so that's just a very basic setup for that one. So the power goes around the outside of the controller and goes into the lights, and the only power that goes into the controller is feeding the electronics on the board.
Quite a few people say, oh, my board's burnt out.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they've tried to power the whole thing up, all their lights.
Oh yeah.
Board.
Oh, I've been on it in the forum, and you're helping someone out with a P2, and it's stop. What are you doing?
The P2 is a budget controller.
Yeah.
So look, they've saved money by because the amount of copper used on the board will change the value of the board. So the amount of copper that's made on that board is only enough really to drive that and 25 pixels. That's about it. Once you get above that, you need to then just look at injecting power because the board itself will not handle that much power flowing through the tracks. So you must ensure when using P2 that you inject power to it and connecting the way he was explaining.
Two types of boards, obviously. Another thing that you hear a lot of the time, $100 board. What's a P12 worth?
205.
200 bucks, whatever, for P12. Why wouldn't you just use these for the whole display? Yeah. So why wouldn't you use one of these for a display? Well, the first thing is none of the stuff that we're using lighting-wise is absolutely perfect, and it doesn't last forever. And it does break, whether it be water ingress or just a solder joint that's gone bad over a couple of years. Yes, you can run 4,000 odd channels out of this, you know, like a couple of thousand pixels, whatever. But if one pixel goes wrong in that string, chances are the ones after it aren't going to work. So you've got to repair that one pixel to get the rest of your house working. Whereas you're using things like and the sort of different items in your display suit different controllers better. Most of us use P12s and Pixelite 16s and things like that for things like our matrix.
Mega trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, mega trees. Yeah, I've basically used these, as I said, for candy canes that are in a row. I've got a couple of spare candy canes at home. If one doesn't work, unplug it, plug a new one in, take it back to the shed, work it out.
I mean, everyone's installation is different.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at the qualities of the different controls. So, you know, that one is more for a distributed kind of display, where you've got controllers out there in the yard, different places. Where the P12 is a centralised approach, where the control is centralised and you're then going to distribute out to that.
Yep. P12's the P12 Pixelite 16s, the controller for a mega tree or a matrix. You wouldn't bother using a P2 for a matrix because again something goes wrong. I wouldn't.
1080 pixels, two of those.
Yeah.
Good value,
Great value.
You've got to weigh up the risks.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, if something happens to John's one of John's pixels halfway through that today on a P2, he'd have to start pulling the whole strip off, replace that strip, you know, put your plugs on it, repair that strip, and keep it as a spare. Yes, you can run a whole display on it. You can run all your E's, and I would probably use one of these when I do my roof section, the caps and all that. I'd probably use one of these, but I'd make sure that I've got spare sort of sections ready to go. I always just have spare sections where I can unplug it, worry about it later. And
Spare sections of lights.
sorry,
Do you use a wireless on that?
wireless.
Yeah.
No, these will only, well, these will plug up to the network.
Can you use a wireless receiver on them? But is that
No,
done or?
no.
There is one floating around. I played around with it that I found that I ended up with problems with timing,
Yeah.
basically.
latency.
Yeah, it'd work beautifully for 10, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and then it'd start to stutter as if whether there's another signal around my area or what. I tried different channels. I tried everything.
When you're dealing with wireless, you need to actually spend the money on the quality of wireless equipment. You're using your normal Telstra supplied wireless connection, it's not going to cover it.
Yep. Okay.
The other advantage too is P12R, basically P12S, is you've got 12 different outputs. So you can actually change the protocol per output as well.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
another advantage.
You can have different voltages as well.
Mm.
My P12S in the front yard drives 5 and 12 volt systems,
Yep.
2811, 2801, and a mix of the 2811s are actually 5 and 12 volt. So
Have we got a S here? Yeah.
It's not any voltage, really.
The whole thing, getting back to the start of this with running pixels and DMX out of the one network. Again, Ben's just going to grab a P12S, which is the new version of the P12R that John's got set up in his boxes over there.
Oops, we closed it, but this here is just in this room when it opens. They're all the wireless channels available right here, right now.
Okay.
Basically,
Where's the
from
DMX
what I
on?
understand is every time it overlaps, it causes
Never seen
problems.
one. Oh, right.
So wireless is like that. There's 14 channels of wireless,
like-
but each channel uses 7, so they always overlap and they always conflict.
This will actually even recommend the best channel for me to hop onto right
Brad,
now.
Brad will actually tell you all about wireless later.
This is called Wi-Fi analyzer. It's just a Wi-Fi analyzer. It's just an app.
Yeah, see my wireless router's over there, it's spitting out a signal at the moment. Just getting back to the start where we were talking about routers, DMX protocols, bridges and pixel controllers. That's a P12S, which is the next version on the P12R that's in the boxes over there. This one actually does both. It's 12 outputs of pixel data, so we're talking 12 strings of pixels off there, and just tucked in on the back there you've got 2 RJ45 plugs, which is effectively one of these boards sitting on it, inside of it. So these ones as a start sort of controller are very good, because you still have your DMX that you can plug your old LOR controllers into, run them in DMX protocols, or your Ray controllers or your little RGB floodlights, get DMX out of it and still have your pixel control out of it as well. So they're a great board, P12S. I don't know a lot about the Pixlite ones. He's got DMX on his
Not
as well.
yet.
Not yet.
They've got the DMX there and they said it would be released with new firmware.
Yeah, we had the little board at Adelaide, and I believe because there was a couple of those given away, I believe some of those could either be Pixel or DMX.
The Pixlite ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got their 4 DMX outputs
Yeah.
on those ones,
Yeah.
16, and yeah, with the new firmware that's come next release, we'll
Yeah.
have all the support for it.
It's just we're just and these sort of controllers with the capability of what they're capable of doing, we are extremely spoilt for choice, and price wise, these guys make no money out of them whatsoever when they build them. They make very little money on them anyway.
That's my entry.
Yeah.
You know, that's how much it's changed. For.
But some of this stuff there is just capable of running most of Vivid.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a lot to Vivid. But yeah, like you could have one of those. You could have one of those sitting up near the Harbour Bridge and probably control the whole of Vivid, no problem at all. Well, maybe a couple of problems, but basically the amount of channel outputs on the boards that we get, the pixel boards and things like that, it's absolutely amazing what they come out with. Yeah, so we'll go. Yeah, so everyone's right with that, because this is basically, like I said, the USB dongles that we all sort of start with. If anyone goes onto an LOR site, they'll buy a USB dongle, they'll buy a 240 volt 16 channel controller and go, right, next year I need $10,000 to get another 30 channels. And you sort of run out of data on where the dongle fits into this picture. I've lost my pen again. Here's the green one.
Over here.
Yeah. So where the dongle fits into this picture is we've got E1.31 on that side, so we've got our data on that side. And this side computer, we've got our USB. We've got our dongle hanging off the end of the USB, and basically an RJ45 plug out the other end of it. That's putting out effectively either a Lightorama protocol, if it is a Lightorama, or DMX as well. With your Lightorama dongles, the pin numbers are different for the output side. All these DMX products, we wire them up as channels or pin numbers 1, 2 and 7. Lightorama are 4, 5 and 6. So there's a couple of things on the wiki that actually go into making up a crossover cable to transfer from Lightorama protocol into, or Lightorama boards into a DMX, something that I read, because basically if you plug a Lightorama board straight into like a D2 or something like that, it's not going to work, because the D2's spitting out channels, pin numbers 1, 2 and 7, and the Lightorama board's looking at pin numbers 4, 5, 6. So we've got to make up a little cable, or people like David used to sell little little changeover devices, which is just basically plug it in and away you go. You got a picture of those? I actually used the female to female connectors that you can just buy from J-Car. You pull them apart, they got all the wires in them. I just had channels channels again. Pin numbers 4, 5, 6 on the one side. I separated those wires out, cut all the rest out. Got pin numbers 1, 2 and 7 on the other side, joined them up, and that was my little adapter. So I could then just use normal Cat5 cables. Biggest thing I had after the first year with using an adapter cable was it was only one directional. So the next year you'd either lose that cable or cut it up for something else, or plug it in backwards and it still wouldn't work. So the little adapters are a good thing. All right, so I think that's basically all we've got on setting up a basic network. When you get into your E1.31 side, as I said, the biggest thing we find out is you mention E1.31 and people just go, no, I don't know. So if you guys need to know anything, a very basic E1.31 setup over there. Effectively, that's all it is. Like I said, I've got a little Raspberry Pi set up there as well. I'll be going into that one later. I actually use the Pi quite effectively with Lightshow Pro and X-Lights. Basically, I do all my sequencing in Lightshow Pro. I use X-Lights as a converter. Plug it onto the USB stick, and I can use that to output up to 64 universes. So it will actually output 64 universes of data. I'm using that one this year as basically just I probably won't use it at Christmas time. I've got a couple of projects that I'm trying to finish this year, but I'll probably use it at Halloween just to control a separate prop that's up in the front yard type thing, so I don't have to run the computer out there. We just have one of those sitting in a box. It's got audio, it's got video if I needed it, and it's also got the data coming out of it. So we will go into that later. Did you find your adapter? Yeah, so this is your changeover cable setup. I'll have to stand back here to do it. So basically, this up here is the D2, it's the protocol bridge. Is it?
It could be a protocol bridge. It could be any.
Yep. And that's going into the XLR plugs, which use channels 1, 2, 3. We'll go down to here. So basically, a array board. 1, 2, 7, 1, 2, 7, 4, 5. That one's wrong.
What is wrong?
There's 4, 5, and 6 on lighter armour. Don't read? Thought it was. Alright, well we'll use it as 7. So basically your data plus line on DMX, like I said, it's all...
You're talking about the common.
Yeah.
Common's common.
Yeah. But it's in the wiki as 6.
Yeah. It could be 7 or 6.
Yeah.
Common's common.
Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't make a difference because it's on 7 there. So our output on our little plugs that would make up for an output on a DMX controller, or if they're like a commercial DMX, or like a commercially available one, like Alan's Mega 60 would have RJ45 plugs on it. All of his plugs are wired up as output pins 1, 2 and 7. Whereas lighter armour is hooked up as 4, 5 and 7 or 6. So we need to swap these cables over, basically in line, whether you use it as an adapter or physically make a cable up. So,
do you know actually why lighter armour chose to use 4, 5?
It's like a 70
to stop us?
Because it's quite odd that they use 4 and 5 compared to the standard that's out there. The reason is that lighter armour use these telephone cables as well.
They do.
So you don't have the 7s. You know what I mean? You're only having four cores. So exactly. So that's the reason why they've actually used those numbers. So it's odd. It's different to the standards, but they have a reason for it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, because they do on those lighter armour boards. You will see it's got usually 3 jacks on it, 2 RJ45s. And a telephone one. What are they? 11s.
Yeah,
RJ11s. Yeah, so that's crossed over. Yeah. So basically what we've got here in the course of things is a DMX board, which is normal pinning, over to a LOR. So we've changed over the channels. We've changed over the cables there. Into another LOR controller, so LOR to LOR, you can just use a standard Cat5 cable because they're talking to each other. See, this one goes up to a store-bought DMX one, which has probably got an XLR plug on it. XLRs, that's in the wiki as well. You can have a look at an XLR plug, pull it apart, it'll have pin 1, 2 and 3 written on it. So you're wiring it up as per that. And the output side of the RGB spotty there into a 3-channel baby sister of the Ray 27. These little 3-channel ones. They're about $8 each. Just normal data cable, or in that case it would just be a piece of Cat5 cable, because the little 3-channel controllers don't have RJ45 plugs on them. You wouldn't use them. You just use data cable, or just cut the ends off and plug them in and away you go. Yeah.
So you can mix and match different things within the one DMX network. So you can mix your LORs.
It's just looking for the same signal. Yeah. All you have to know is
it's got to have your data, your plus data and your minus data is going to be.
And your ground. And well, we do a lot of common stuff over here. We mentioned common on all of our wiki stuff and all that. The Americans don't use the common, very rarely. You'll see a lot of their stuff never has common. You'll ask them about hooking up a lighter armour controller. It's pin 4 and 5.
continue now, doesn't work.
No.
It's not 100% guaranteed to
It's
work.
not
if you don't
100%,
connect the
it
common.
does work.
When
It's not
I
100%
originally did
guaranteed.
this, I actually followed the US and I didn't have the common.
Yep.
And then we had Eric from Northern Territory.
Yep.
He was having a whole hell of a lot of trouble trying to connect up and get his Light-O-Rama stuff working. And he had a lot of it. And in the end, we worked it out to be that we didn't have the common wire. So as soon as he hooked the common wire, all
Bang.
worked.
All went.
So we discovered that the common wire is actually very important. If you don't have it, it can cause you trouble. Most times you can connect it, it's not going to give you troubles, but it's better off to connect it.
Yeah, I think it's there for a reason. You use it.
Yep, exactly.
Differential signalling, is that?
With the,
Yeah, between the plus and minus.
You should have to have a reference.
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly it.
Well, cool.
But I said the US literature doesn't
It's like
show
you're addressing
the common.
For your D2, for your two universes out of one universe.
Yep.
How do you get that?
Yep. Let me charge up the laptop.
Yeah,
We'll have a look at that later.
Thanks.
Yep.
What was the question?
Just addressing the different universes out of the outputs on like a P12 or a D2.
You get two universes out of
I had the interface up there earlier, that J1 sys one, and that was the one that we'd use.
Okay.
And basically the top column on that was universe 1, and I probably had, I think it's actually universe 17 I use on that one. But and I had the protocol plugged in there as 2811, the speed, the start channel, and basically the next line under it was 234.
That's fine, yeah, but it's then how do you connect up the physical wiring?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
we
next
can,
thing.
we can
Yeah,
just
we'll
have a
say
look at that
it's
over here.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly the same way Eddie's got it in the roof heat, basically, for the lights. So you have your 680 lights end to end.
Okay. So,
But as we discussed,
oh, there's
you
one.
lose one halfway
Go grab
through.
it, else,
Yeah,
just
grab
do
it.
a 10-minute thing on the Light-O-Rama.
Yeah, yeah, I'll, yeah, so we